Hi, this is Scott Henderson. You're watching Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo, and my guest today is the guitar virtuoso, Scott Henderson. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It's great to be here. I'm not a virtuoso, but I'm glad to be here anyway.
I think a lot of people would disagree with that, but let's carry on. Yeah, well, let's start the interview by talking about your upcoming album, Karnevel, which comes out on February 2nd. It's your first one since 2019's Prime Mover, right? What took you so long between two albums?
Well, I mean, writing is hard. I'm not a prolific writer. It just takes so long. I don't want to just write the music. I want to go out on the road and play the music with the band and really kind of explore all the possibilities of a tune before I go into the studio. Because I remember in the old days, in the Tribal Tech days, before we were touring, we would put together these tunes and go right into the studio and play them. And then after we'd played them live, we'd be kicking ourselves going, oh man, if this was only on the record, because, you know, after playing the tunes night after night, so many cool things happen that you want to keep, and new ideas come. You might even want to change the tempo of the tune, or a lot of things happen. And this gives us an opportunity to really explore the music before we record it. So that's one of the reasons. And then the other reason is that after we go into the studio and actually play live together, I'm home layering and actually adding more to the compositions, because it's not just about layering other sounds. It's also about sometimes expanding the tune itself with new lines, with sometimes I like to do the things where, you know, a guitar, there's only, you know, 4 or 5 notes in a guitar chord, but on a piano, you can have 10.
Yeah.
Or if you want, I guess, if you play 2 notes with 1 finger. So I like to add other voicings to the voicings, you know, and sort of put those in the background. It sort of adds a new harmonic dimension to some of the harmony. And, you know, I like to do lots of stuff in the studio to just expand the music. And that takes time, especially to find sounds, because I got a lot of pedals. Finding the right sound for the right part, it's very time consuming, you know. So
I bet. Yeah.
So that's why it takes such a long time.
Got it. And well, it was recorded live in the studio, and you have Romain Labaye on bass and Archibald Ligonnière on drums.
Yes.
Same guys as Prime Mover.
People Mover.
People Mover, sorry. And how long did you guys rehearse the material for until you felt you were ready to press record in the studio?
I mean, we don't really need to rehearse that much, because for us, it's just another gig. We go into the studio, we've already played the music on the road, and it's just like rolling into another gig and playing another gig. So it sort of takes a little bit of the pressure off, because the emphasis is more on being creative rather than just managing to play the right notes, which is, you know, how the very first gig of a tour is. It's like your mindset is just, don't fuck up, don't fuck up, right? But after you've played the music for a couple of weeks, it's just sort of like it goes on automatic pilot, and all you're thinking is, how creative can I be in the context of what we're doing? And that's what I want the vibe to be in the studio. Just like, we already know this music, it's not a big deal to go in and just play the music. We just want to try to be creative within, you know, what we're doing, and that's what's the most important thing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned adding layers in post-production. I mean, on a song like Haunted Ballroom, for example, did you play the rhythm live and added the solos later, or was it the other way around?
No, I soloed live. I always solo live, because if I don't solo live, the guys don't react to my solos.
Okay.
So even if I don't like my solo that I played live, if I have to fix it or even play another solo, I have to keep the first one that I played as a blueprint, because I have to play something that's very similar to one that I played in the studio. Otherwise, it won't make any sense to with what the guys played. So, you know, like I've heard some weird, I don't know if I'd call them jazz albums or fusion albums, but I feel like somebody went and overdubbed the solo and didn't really care that like they just played a brand new solo and didn't seem to care that the bass and drums don't go with it.
Right, right.
You know, so like I'm always really careful. Like if I am going to play another solo, or if I'm going to fix a solo that I played, I rhythmically it has to be almost identical, because otherwise it just makes the guys sound like they don't know what they're doing because they reacted to some. But now there are other songs where the purpose of the song is not to have any reactionary interplay. And I just want them to play just a static groove over, because it's more of like a pop mentality, you know, and that way I could play a brand new solo and it wouldn't matter what I play because they're not reacting to it. They're just grooving. So, and we have both those kinds of music. Like there are some tunes that just need a groove, and if they react to what I play, it won't be right for the tune. So it just depends on what kind of a song it is.
Got it. And I want to go on a tangent a little bit. I mean, I guess we have time. I hope we have time.
Yeah, I'm in no hurry.
Yeah, okay, cool. No, there was a long time in the 80s, or I guess it started in the 80s, where the solos were kind of cut and paste from several takes. I think even Eddie Van Halen did this. Alex Lifeson is famous.
We all do it. We all do it. Yeah. I mean, because I look at making an album as a kind of a different art form than playing live. Live is theater, you know?
Yeah.
Making an album is like making a movie. You have different takes, you know, the director chooses the best takes, puts them into the film. You know, I look at them making an album the same way. I don't care if I don't play a perfect solo the first time, because I'm going to fix mistakes. I'm going to make it the best I can make it, you know, with the tools that I have. I play live every night. So, you know, I'm used to playing live and making mistakes and having everybody hear them.
Right.
I'm gonna have to listen to this album forever, so I don't want my mistakes on a record. So I'm not ashamed to fix them.
Right.
You know, another guy like, you know, Pat Metheny is you know, he's like me. He goes in and he really pays attention to detail on his records, and he makes his records really, you know, really you can tell how much work he puts into them, you know. And I'm kind of like that. I don't want this to be an album just because someone was there with a microphone. You know, that's how jazz albums are to me. It's like, I love jazz. I don't have anything against jazz, but a lot of jazz albums, they're only albums because somebody was recording it. So different than a gig.
Right.
You know what I mean? My album, I want the albums to be more produced, more
structured.
Yeah. Like, well, sometimes they're not structured at all because a lot of crazy stuff happens live that you want to keep in the studio. So we try to keep a balance between what is written and what is improvised, because we want there to be a lot of freedom to improvise. But having said that, if there are moments that don't work, then we have an opportunity to go in and fix them, you know, so that they do work. And I don't know. I feel like sooner or later we'll probably do a live album, and then everybody can hear what we sound like on stage, just the three of us, with no fixing, no production, just it is what it is. And that's too, you know, both things are cool, you know. Theater and a movie, it's all good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This record is more like a movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw a somewhat recent version of you doing Dolomite live. And you can tell that you take chances live. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know, well, we take chances in the studio too. And sometimes we do leave mistakes, because if the mistakes are cool, we like them. You know, sometimes it's not about whether it's a mistake or not. It's just whether it's hip or not.
Right,
Because
right.
sometimes wrong notes are great and sometimes mistakes are great, but sometimes even things that people wouldn't consider mistakes, they have a wrong feel, or they just don't
Yeah.
right, or they just don't hit you as something you'd want to keep, even if
Right.
it's right. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's
Yeah.
not really about whether it's a mistake or not. It's just whether you can live with it, if you like it. You know what I mean? If it's something that you want people to hear.
Got it. Got it.
Because lots
Yeah.
of times I like it when people hear some mistakes because they're funny
Yeah.
or have a hip quality to them. I know there's this one solo on a McLaughlin album. It's his solo on I'm not sure the name of the song. It might be Hymn to Him on the Apocalypse album,
Mm,
John McLaughlin Apocalypse.
right.
And there's this place where the string slips out from under his finger when he's bending it. That's like my favorite part of the solo. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
those things are cool.
Yeah, of course. That gives it character for sure.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And well, I like the theme that you chose for the album, the LA Fair and carnivals in general. I wanted to ask you if you've been to the actual carnival in Rio at any given time.
I never have. We're always there at the wrong time.
Right, right.
I've heard about it all my life, and I've never been in Rio when that was actually going. It must be an amazing time. I mean, it must be
Yeah,
incredible.
it's a
Yeah.
sight to behold. We'll
Yeah, I
leave it
bet
at
it
that way.
is. I
Yeah,
I bet there's just so many beautiful women that your eyes would pop out of your head.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And well, I like the cover too. I mean, I have it here in the background.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
was fun to make.
yeah. I have a
Yeah.
picture of my daughter in exactly that same pose in a merry-go-round without the guitar, of course, but that's a cool
You,
idea. Yeah.
you know what? My daughter came up with this idea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we were thinking like, I knew I wanted to name the album out something to do with the fair and
Mm.
something to do with the fun atmosphere. And she came up with the idea, why don't you have a carousel, but have a kid riding a guitar instead of a horse? That's perfect.
Yeah,
Done. Right.
yeah.
So I had to find a picture of a kid on a horse, and the artist was able to Photoshop in the guitar and everything, make it look like that. But I really like it. It's really fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And well, a title that caught my attention is COVID vaccination. Obviously, it
Yeah.
was born out of the frustration with COVID, right? Yeah.
Yes, but it's also a tribute to Tower of Power. And
Okay.
it even says on the record that it is a tribute to Tower of Power, one of
Mhm.
my favorite bands. So I basically kind of got the groove from Soul Vaccination and then
Oh, yeah.
added my melody and added my own little thing to it. And I used rather than the way we play it live is I just play the chords, like any guitar player would. But for the album, I sort of did it like a horn section, and every horn is using a different pedal. So for the trumpet, I think I used love pedal chula and a
Mm.
wah wah that's sort of like almost open. That's as close as I could get to a trumpet sound. The saxophone has kind of a fizzy, razzy sound. So
Mm.
I found a fuzz pedal that was perfect for a saxophone. And then I have this pedal. It's actually called a trombetta
Oh.
robotone, and it actually does sound like a trombone. If you play, if you pick the string kind of very close to the bridge,
Mm.
get this warble like a trombone makes on the low notes. So it was the perfect pedal for the trombone. And then I sort of listened to Tower of Power because I didn't know how they put their horns in the stereo mix. And what I found out is that they're really spread far apart. Like the trumpet is way over on the far right. One of the saxophones is way over on the far left, and they're very spread out from left
Right.
to right. That's what makes it sound so big. So I did the same thing. So I took an arranging lesson from Tower of Power. you
Good
know,
stuff.
so yeah, I tried to make it sound, you know, as close to their sound as possible. Like we made that song much drier. There's not much reverb,
Mm.
and I hired a great conga player, who's a friend of Scott Kinsey's, Mr. Garcia,
Mm.
amazing guy. Like you know, his father's really famous, and just wow.
Cool, cool. Hey, where would I start with Tower of Power? Out of curiosity, because I'm a metal guy first and foremost. Look at my shirt,
Well,
Baroness.
oh yeah, well I you know, I love a lot of that stuff too. I'm a big Meshuggah fan. You
oh,
know,
I'm
so
seeing them tonight.
you're
You should-
kidding me.
I am here in
I
Toronto.
love them. You know, they came to MI,
Mm.
and I got to talk to them. You know,
Oh,
and I got to meet them, and I asked them, um, "Is your music in different time signatures?" And they said, "No, it's all in 4/4." I was like, "Are you serious?" So it's all about the accents, and they said, "Yeah,
yeah,
it's all about the accents. It's totally 4/4 all the way." And I was like, I can't believe that. That is some amazing stuff that they play, man. They're
yeah,
so good.
yeah.
Where are they from? They're from Sweden,
From
right?
Sweden, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's a badass band. And I love Pantera too, you know, yeah, there's some you know, there's some of those metal bands that really stick out to me, that just they have such an amazing sound, and they're so good, you know.
hmm
So
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
like everything. You know, I'm a big fan of funk, rock, jazz, classical, progressive rock. I like everything. So
yeah, yeah. Good
if it's
stuff.
good, I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
If you buy the album that's just called Tower of Power,
Mm.
it's What Is Hip and Soul Vaccination. That's a great place to start. Um, I just got to tell you a story. It In the United States, music can be very um cultist. It's
Yeah,
like you would never catch a metal guy listening to Beyonce because his friends would make fun of him. And
yeah,
I think that's really sad, because people miss out on great music by being so close-minded, right? So we have a lot of metal guys at our school, right? They only listen to metal. You wouldn't ever catch them listening to anything else. It's not just about the music, but the whole lifestyle, the way they dress, the whole thing. They're
yeah.
metal guys, right? And they're not going to listen to any other kind of music. Tower Power came to do a concert at MI, and those guys got their fucking heads blown off.
I
They
bet.
were
Yeah,
just like,
yeah,
okay, so metal isn't the only thing that can be powerful and knock you out of your seat, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
Tower of Power kicked ass, and they were so powerful sounding and amazing sounding. And those guys had their mouths on the floor. They were just like, holy shit.
I bet. I bet.
You
Yeah.
know, so you know,
Yeah.
I kind of like to see that when people have their minds opened. You know,
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah. And well, back to the album. Let me ask you about Puerto Madero. It's a
Yeah.
very cool spot in Buenos Aires where I've
Yes, it
been.
is,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why I named it that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I,
What kind of
I
memories do you have of that place?
I've been there many times,
Yeah.
and Argentina. Probably in South America. I've probably played in Buenos Aires the most,
Hmm.
and I've been there at least 20 times through the years with Tribal Tech and with my trio,
Yeah.
and you know, sort of explored the city, and I've even got opportunities to be there like more than a week at a time, playing with Argentinian musicians at a
Mm.
club at clubs there, you know, so sort of being the house band for a week. So I really, that's one of the cities in South America, one of the few cities that I've really gotten to explore and know pretty well. And
Nice.
it's a great town, and that's a beautiful place with the bridge and everything and all the shops.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that song, you know, I usually write a song and then somehow I think of like what I didn't write the song for that place, but when I started listening to the song, it reminded me of that place. So
Right.
I I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's just a one of those really pretty harmonic songs. It's kind of Wayne Shorter influenced,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and Wayne's music. I've always really loved Wayne's music. It has a lot of chords in it, and I love harmony, but I don't think I would want to do a whole album where every song had that many chords, you know, because it tends to just be too much, I guess. So
Yeah.
for me, I like to have a balance. Some songs are more based on one key and one harmony center, like Karnevel, the opening cut. It's basically the whole
Yeah.
song in A, basically, and then maybe it goes to F sharp for a minute, and then I think it goes to the 4 chord, but it's very simple, you know. And then
Yeah.
you have a chord like I'm in a song like Porta Madera where there's a chord on every quarter note.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of a contrast, you know.
Well, and Green Mansion is a song that it's very much a stripped down version where it's only you doing those
It's just
jazzy chords.
me, and it's actually a tribute to one of my guitar heroes, Ted Greene. And do you know who he is?
I do not. No.
Ted Greene is one of the legendary guitarists, solo guitarists. He's not known for playing with a bass player and drummer. He's known for playing solo guitar. And in the United States and in the world, he's probably revered as the heaviest, most genius solo guitarist there is, you know,
wow.
as an improviser. You know, he's got the mastery of Segovia. He has the jazz chops of someone like Joe Pass. He's very Bach oriented, Bach influenced.
Okay.
And this guy can basically, he's a kind of a guy that he could easily say, I'm going to play Autumn Leaves as if Bach was playing it, and just improvise this unbelievable stuff with counterpoint and everything. And it's just mind blowing. You know, he was a freak. And it's, I remember when he died, there were like about 500 guitar players at his wake.
Wow.
You know, that they flew from everywhere in the United States to be there at his wake to show respect for him.
Right.
So the reason I named that song Green Mansion is because I studied with Ted, you know, took a few lessons from him. And when I took these lessons, I came out of the lesson, I was walking to my car, and I was looking up at the apartment building where Ted lived. And it was one of those beehive apartment buildings that goes about 4 blocks long.
Right.
And I'm just going, what the fuck, man? Like, I just studied with one of the heaviest musicians on the planet. This guy should be living on the biggest mansion in the biggest mountain in the world. And he's living in this anonymous beehive.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense to my brain, you know? So named the song Green Mansion because that's where I feel Ted should have lived his life, in a mansion, because he was that amazing.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I like how the main idea or the main theme of the title track, Karnevel, makes a comeback on the last song, Carney Style.
Yeah. It's kind of a fun. I didn't want to end the song with a Sasia because it's kind of, you know, mellow and a little bit, you know, just kind of, you know, I wanted to end it a little more powerful. So I thought to bring that theme back and just improvise on it. You know, it was fun.
Yeah. And a question that you must get a lot is if you're ever going to revisit the style of those tribal tech albums, are there any plans at all to do that at one point? Or?
Not really, because I don't know. I've played so much of my life with keyboard players, and you know, I've got my first break with Jeff Berlin. He had a keyboard player in his band, and then I played with Jean-Luc Ponty. He had a keyboard player in his band. Then Chick Corea, then Joe Zawinul, then Tribal Tech, and Tribal Tech was a very keyboard-driven band. So it's just kind of, for me to go back and play with keyboards again, there's not much for, sometimes there's not much for a guitarist to do when you're playing with a keyboard player, but be the saxophone player and play single lines. And you don't get to play chords and really explore the instrument as much, you know?
Yeah.
So now actually we have a second guitarist in the band. Her name is Lena Mistalska. She's from Poland.
Okay.
And she plays rhythm guitar, though she can also play. She's a really good slide player, but she's also a good blues guitarist too. So you can check her out at lenamistalska.com.
Okay.
But she plays in the band. She plays on about maybe 5 or 6 songs. And it's nice for me because I can be that saxophone player again. I can just turn up the distortion and play single lines like a lead guitarist, which I kind of miss from the days when I was playing. So now I get to do both, and it's kind of nice to, you know, have both things happening.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a drag. I'm sorry. It's a little bit of a drag sometimes when you're playing trio and every song has to be played where you have to play the melody and the chords at the same time. that can get restricting too, because you're locked in. You can't be as expressive sometimes as when you're just playing a single note and you get to bend notes and make sounds, and so it's both things are fun.
Yeah, there's a responsibility aspect when you're playing in the trio, because they rely on you, right, on your cues and everything.
I mean, everybody should play trio because it's challenging and it's really cool, but there are limitations to it, so
yeah. And I mean, you're known as a guitar player, and I've seen you being mentioned by Guthrie Gowan, Greg Howe, Eric Johnson. Have you noticed your influence in someone else's style, or?
I don't know, man. I think we're all influenced a little bit by each other. Like we can't help it, because every time I hear another guitar player and he's doing something that I wish I could do, I'm tempted to try to do it. It's just like human nature. You want to grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah.
You always want to explore a little bit of what all these other guys can do. I've been really influenced by a lot of guitar players. Schofield was one of my early influences. Alan Holsworth, Jeff Beck, Richie Blackmore, Jimmy Page, Wes Montgomery. All these guys have influenced me at some point and still do, at some point in my career. So I guess after listening to all the music that we listen to as musicians, sooner or later, all that gets stirred up into a recipe that sounds like us.
Right.
And I don't know exactly how long that takes. Probably a long time, but now most people say, well, when they hear me, they know it's me. But sure, they can still hear those influences of other guitarists in my playing. Just like, I mean, when I hear Michael Brecker, I hear John Coltrane, because Michael Brecker basically learned everything John Coltrane ever played, but he added his own vocabulary to it. And another guy would be like, there's a really great guitar player here, another amazing solo guitar player named Philip Degree. He's from New Orleans, and you can hear a heavy influence of Chet Atkins and Lenny Breau and all these really amazing players, but yet he's added his own thing, and he only sounds like him, but you can hear those influences in his playing. And in fact, not many people know this, and nothing against Jeff Beck, because I love Jeff Beck, but Jeff Beck was not as original as people think. If you listen to Les Paul, you can hear where a lot of Jeff Beck's influence came from, because I was in a music store when I was a kid and they were playing a Les Paul album in the store. I'd never heard Les Paul. I thought he was just the guy they named the guitar after.
Same here.
Heard him in my life, right? So they're playing this album, and I thought there was a new Jeff Beck album out, and I was like, "When did Jeff Beck put a new album out?" And they said, "That's not Jeff Beck. That's Les Paul." And I was like, "Oh, whoa." So now I see where Jeff Beck got a lot of his influence from. Not that Jeff Beck isn't original, because my God, he added a whole new thing to what Les Paul was doing, but you can really hear the influence of Les Paul in his playing. So, I mean, thank goodness for influences. They inspire us and they make us who we are,
Of course, yeah. And I mean, I've always seen you play with the teal green Strat. I'm not sure if that's the appropriate name for the color, but
yes, seafoam green, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you play any other guitar or any other color?
I do. I've got lots of different color John Surd, but for some reason the seafoam one is my favorite live guitar.
Right.
And I've just been playing that one for a long time, and I just really like it, like the way it sounds on stage. I actually use a vintage white one when I record. It has more bass, and that's better for recording, not as good for the stage, because sometimes on the stage, bass is the last thing I need.
Right.
But it's sort of like a vintage white. It's more like the color of a banana. It looks like a banana.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
This is my recording guitar.
Oh wow. Okay. Looks pretty cool.
It's like a banana.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's funny about you know, the instruments is when John Suhr makes a guitar for me, which, you know, it's only like once every year, once every 2 years, more like every 3 years these days, because I have enough guitars, but he makes 5 guitars and he lets me pick my favorite one and sells the other 4 to dealers, right? And the thing is that even though it's the same type of wood or same exact type of wood, same exact hardware, they all sound different, you know, because wood is wood and it just no 2 pieces of wood sound alike. It's crazy how different they sound. They all sound good. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard a bad sounding guitar from Suhr, but one might have a little more mid-range, one might have a little more treble, one might have a little more bass, and they just all sound a little bit different. And it's just crazy because it's no matter how technical you get with all the specs and everything, it's still wood.
Yeah,
And
of course.
also the combination of the neck has its own tone. So if you change the neck and put it on a different body, you're going to have a completely different sound. And John showed me this one thing where if you have a neck with no strings on it, just the neck by itself with no tuners, and if you just put a pencil in the hole where the tuner's supposed to go and hold it up, and if you tap the back of the neck, it will make a tone. It'll go.
Oh, wow.
Right? And some of them have a tone that's lower or higher. And the lower the tone of the neck when you tap it, usually the more bass the guitar will have. So interesting, you know? Like you find this kind of stuff out when you're a nerd.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm geeking out here. Let me ask you, do you still practice a lot today? I mean, how many hours? You're a professional guy, right? You need to maintain your chops.
I have to because if I don't, stuff starts going out of my head. I haven't been practicing in the last couple of months because I've been more of a. It's one thing when, like we were talking about before, the difference between doing a jazz album or doing a produced album like this. And when you're doing an album, this kind of a record, so much attention is put on the sounds. And, you know, I'm there at the mix, I'm there at the mastering, I'm there all the way. So the latter part of the record is more about turning knobs, and it really takes me away from the guitar. So for the last month of the record, I was basically an engineer and a producer, not a guitar player. Now I have to bust my ass and practice a lot just to get my chops back because I'm so rusty. So now I'm practicing like 5-6 hours a day, mainly on the tunes that we're going to play on the road, but just practicing and improvising just sort of to get my chops back. And I need to because I'm rusty as hell. So we're touring in February, so I've got 2 months and I'll be okay. But I got to play a lot. Sometimes it's not about how can I explain this? Pat Metheny was talking about this one time. Not about really practicing what you know already as far as lines and vocabulary, but just to be able to have an idea and make your fingers go to what you're thinking without making mistakes, because it's easy to play the stuff you already know. What's hard to do is play stuff you've never played before. And if you hear something in your head, you want to be able to execute it. Your fingers need to go to places and do things they haven't done before. And it's more important to practice on that than anything else, because sometimes when you're on the road and playing every night, it's very easy to fall in the trap of playing licks that you already know and playing stuff I mean, we all do it. I mean, we have to. We all have a vocabulary, but we try to get out of that vocabulary. The goal is to try to play new things every night. And so a good way to do that is just practice doing it. You know, practice having a thought and see if your fingers can go to that thought. And that type of practice is really important. So I that's what I think is the most important thing.
Right. And do you find that your practice has changed since you started? I mean, the music
Oh
business
yeah.
certainly has evolved, right? Since
Yeah,
you started.
sure. I mean, I used to just practice on standards.
Mm,
You know, I used to somehow think in my mind that I was going to be a jazz guitar player, and I used to practice on All the Things You Are and Stella by Starlight and
right.
Giant Steps. And now I just completely gave that up.
Mm,
I have no desire to be a jazz guitar player in the traditional sense of the word, you know,
right.
um, because I want to write my own music and just do my own thing. And there's so many guys out there that do that better than I do. I mean, you got Kurt Rosenwinkel and and Jonathan Kreisberg. And I mean, there's just so many great hollow body jazz guitar players who basically their thing is playing standards.
Right.
And I don't need to be there. You know what I mean? Let them do that. They're much better at it than me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like to just do what I do. I'm kind of a combination of a rock, blues, jazz guitarist, and um, I know that there are guys that play better jazz than me. There are definitely guys that play better rock than me. Especially most of my students play rock better than I do.
Right.
You know, but I just want to be the best Scott Henderson I can be. And that sort of encompasses all that. So if I'm a jack of
Yeah.
all trades and master of none, that's
Yeah.
okay with me. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, being the best Scott Henderson is a start. I try and be the best Rodrigo every day, and
That's
sometimes I
what you
fail
got to do,
miserably.
man.
But yeah,
You know, at some point, you just have to be you.
yeah,
And you can't really let it get you down because there are people that are better than you doing this or better than you doing that.
yeah,
You just want to be you.
yeah,
And that's the most important thing, to be true to yourself.
yeah.
You know, so that's all I hope for. Actually, my I would say that one of the things that has really changed um in my whole view of music and playing music is to get the attention off of myself, to not be so self-conscious, but think about what's going on around me, think about what the band sounds like and how we're communicating on stage, because I think that's one of the favorite things that the audience likes to see,
Yeah.
when there's a communication between the musicians on stage and the musicians are having a musical conversation on stage. And I think they'd rather see that than just one guy up there playing his licks, you know.
Yeah.
So I try not to think about myself as much and think, so much attention on the fretboard and me. It's all about me, and think about more like what's going on as a whole. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of times it helps me play better because I play my best when I'm relaxed, and I'm more relaxed when I'm not so self-conscious. I
Right.
think everybody's like that. Because
Yeah.
when you look in at yourself too much and you've got that guy on your shoulder that's saying, oh, that phrase you just played sucked. And then you try something else and that guy goes, that sucked too. Try something else. You know,
Right.
sort of like being your own judge, jury, and executioner
Yeah.
as you play.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to get rid of that guy and just have a good time when I'm playing.
Yeah.
And usually the more I focus on what's going on around me, the more fun I have.
Yeah. I struggle with that every day when I'm practicing because, when I'm doing like a difficult solo, for example, that I just learned, there's always that difficult part where you're tense trying to make that happen on the frets. But like when you relax, it's
Yeah.
easier. When you stop looking, it gets
It's
easier.
always easier when you relax.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's not just about music, it's about everything. If you're tense and nervous, you don't do anything well.
Yeah.
Sports, sex,
Yeah, of course.
anything. It's
Yeah.
just like you fail when you're
Yeah.
tense and miserable, and it's sort of like a downward spiral
Yeah.
that gets you into a kind of a dark world when you're so down on yourself that you can't have any fun. It makes you nervous. It
Yeah.
makes you judge yourself and hate yourself. And it's good. It's a certain amount of self-hate is healthy because it makes you grow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nobody that shouldn't say, hey man, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
That's a positive way to look at it. There's room for improvement, but I suck.
Yeah.
That's negative.
It's the opposite of it. Yeah.
That's negative.
Yeah.
That's not helping you. That's not helping anybody. That's just creating an atmosphere for you to fail.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
well, it's like when you set up these lofty goals for yourself that are just not human to
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you're going to fall, and then that fall brings on more self-hate. So
I know. Yeah.
shouldn't have these lofty goals. You just do the best you can with the time that you have, and accept that you're not going to be perfect. No one is.
Of course. Yeah.
And you know, we sort of look at mistakes as more like comedy, like Simpsons, like, you know, it's funny, you know, like
Yeah.
fuck up. It's supposed to be funny. It's not supposed to make you miserable. We're not brain surgeons. So if we make a mistake, nobody's going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And the
Yeah.
worst thing that can happen is someone in the audience points his finger and laughs at you, and you know,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. You go to the next two.
Yeah, you know, so you're a musician and a comedian at the same time. It's great.
It's a bonus. Yeah. 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 Well, and I have a follow-up to that. It's somewhat related to what you just said. I mean, there's a lot of bands who value consistency and they want to play the same thing night after night. Rush is an example of that. Dream Theater, all those prog metal bands, right?
Sure, yeah.
For you, that would be death, I think, because you
It
want
would, yeah,
every night to
because
be different. Yeah.
it would. I mean, but there is a certain amount of that in our music. I mean, there are certain voicings that I like, especially when you're playing solo. It's not like I can just change the voicings of the chords that especially when I have to play the melody on top. So I'm having to play this the same exact way every night and try not to make a mistake. So that's the classical aspect of our music. But then I try to balance that by having lots of open sections where anything can happen.
Right.
And if you have a balance, then you're not going to feel like it's death, you know. But if I had to play, that's one of the reasons why we drop certain songs from the set. If we start feeling like this song is one of those top 40 songs where we're playing it the same way every single night and it's just not going anywhere, we drop it.
Right.
Because
Right.
it's no longer fun to play. Maybe it was fun to play for the first 5 to 10 times, but after that, everybody's looking at each other and going, "This tune is not really. It has no freedom in it. It's not allowing us to have any fun."
Right. And so you get to that point collectively as a band that you realize,
Yeah,
hey,
kind
this
of.
is
Yeah,
stiff.
we all look at each other and just go, "Do we really want to play this tune anymore?" It's not. It doesn't feel like we're playing it any different from night to night. And then we try to make suggestions. Well, maybe if we did this and we did that, but if that doesn't work, then we just drop it.
Right.
You
know?
Right. Larry Carlton had a good saying one time. It's like, you should have half the set for you and half the set for the audience. So the set for the audience is that stuff that you memorize and you play it the same way every time, and it always sounds great and the audience is happy. And then for you, you have the 50% where anything could happen and you're just improvising and just having a good time. Sometimes it falls flat on its face, sometimes it works, but whatever. You're having a good time because we're improvisers and we like to improvise. So if you take that out of it, it gets stale.
Yeah, kind of like play the hits, but also play the deep tracks for the longtime fans as well, right? Or
Exactly.
kind of like that approach. Yeah.
Exactly.
And nowadays, I know how you hate, how much you hate Spotify, but I see bands picking their set list based on Spotify views. To me, that is the death of an industry, to be honest.
Yeah, that's kind of sad, man. The whole streaming thing is really sad. Just how somehow corporate people got a hold of our music.
Yeah.
And we're not making as much money from it as we used to. And I think that's criminal, actually. I don't really understand, because I'm not a business guy and I don't follow the business trends. This sort of happened in the background in my life over the last 20 years. I don't even know how it happened because I'm not an expert. But when I look at the big picture and I go, how in the world did that happen? Yeah. How did these people get a hold of our music and get the right to basically give it away? I don't understand it. It feels like it should be illegal, you know? Yeah. And I don't know why it's not illegal. So it's very interesting to me. Of course, you know, when I put out a new album with a distributor, because I don't use labels anymore. I put the albums out myself. I don't like labels because they don't really do that much that you can't do yourself. But you have a choice. You can tell your distributor, no, I don't want my music to be on any streaming services. But these days, it's not really a good idea because if someone, I sort of am looking at streaming now as sort of like a movie trailer. If someone hears something they like online, they might go out and buy it, because not everyone wants to listen to music only when they're online. They want to have it on their phone, or they want to have it on their computer, or they might have a CD player, or a vinyl player or whatever. And so a lot of people have told me that I heard you on Spotify and I went out and bought your album.
Wow.
So that's, it's an advertisement. It's basically all it is. It's putting your music out there as ads.
Honestly, I mean, my wife has it. I don't have it. I absolutely hate Spotify. I want to have my music in a gallery where I can, draw from and listen on my commute, on my runs. But honestly, it's not my thing.
It's not my thing either. It's my daughter's thing. My daughter's 20. So of course she has Spotify and she listens to all the music. And I always tell her, you shouldn't just listen to this music for free. If you like something and you find yourself listening to it over and over, you should go out and buy that. Because that's supporting the artist that you love so much. If you listen to it just a couple times and you just go, I don't think you owe anything to that artist. But if it's something becomes your favorite thing and you really, really appreciate it, support them. Don't boycott them. Go out and buy their record so they make money,
And I think it's another horrible side effect is that it ruins people's attention span. Like, people listen to 30 seconds of a song. Next. I don't like this. I don't like this.
Well, that's maybe the young generation has a little bit of ADD going.
A little bit of that. It sucks, man. I struggle with that. My daughter is 9 and I try to educate her. At least listen to the full song before you make an opinion, right? So.
I know. It is weird because we're more from a generation that sits there and listens to a song and we're quiet while the music is going and we're really listening. We're deep into the music, like the way I would watch a movie in the theater. I don't talk while the movie's playing. I want to hear every word they're saying. I want to hear all the dialogue. I hear some people listening to music and they're talking while the music is going on. And I'm going,
I hate that.
What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Like, you're supposed to be listening to the music and really like listening. And some people just have lost the ability to do that. I don't know how that happens, but weird to me.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned guitar classes. I mean, there's high caliber players like yourself that do not like to teach beginners. Do you teach all levels, or do you have a preference of level?
I teach all levels. I don't mind. I mean, of course, I would rather teach stuff that I'm interested in. But when you're teaching a beginner and you really see that they're really into it, and you see that little light bulb go off in their head, it's a gratifying feeling. I think it's a nice feeling, and I don't mind, if I'm teaching somebody a C major scale. I'm never teaching somebody a pure technical thing. I'm teaching them how to make music. And if you teach somebody how to make music, beautiful music can be made with just a simple C major scale. Amazing interval design, amazing rhythms can be played, amazing bends can be done with just that C major scale. So the C major scale is a simple tool, but there's so much you can do with it. So I never look at it like I'm teaching a beginner. I'm just looking at it like I'm teaching a beginning tool. And that's okay with me, as long as I'm trying to show them how to make cool music with even the simplest tool. It's all good for me.
Right. And how can people book a lesson with you? I mean, is it through an institution or through your website?
No, I teach at MI. I'm an open counselor at MI, and I teach there on Monday, but if, and I'm not doing online lessons right now because I just don't have the time. But when I get back from this tour, which starts on February 16th, and I get home I think on April 17th, 2024.
Right.
After that, I'll start taking online students again, and they can just email me. My email is on my website, scotthenderson.net. And they just email me and book a lesson. And it's not the kind of thing where they do it every week. I usually give them, they were going to record it, and I give them so much stuff to work on that they won't see me for a couple of months.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that once they've sort of absorbed all the stuff that I've given them and had a chance to look at and work on it, maybe I'll hear from them 2 or 3 months later. Can we do another lesson? That
okay.
Kind of, yeah.
I might take you up on that. I might book a lesson.
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to, man.
Yeah.
Give me your money.
Sure. Yeah, I can play basic stuff, man. I mean, I can play Rush, which is kind of complicated, but
that's hard. I don't know if I could play some of that stuff.
It is hard. It is hard. But I have a lack of theory, like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, that's easy to learn. You know, I mean, you've already got the dexterity in your fingers where you could learn anything.
Yeah.
You know, so I would definitely label you as a very advanced student. You know,
yeah.
So the thing is that a lot of people don't realize is that they think it's always going to be harder than it is. It's not, you know, because especially someone that's been playing for a little while and has some facility in their fingers and they know, you know, how to play, basically, when they see these new concepts and sort of realize how it works, some of the jazz theory and stuff like that, they go, oh, that's all it is. Oh,
right.
I can get this, you know. It's not all that hard. And, you know, so much of what we learn from transcribing others. So when you teach someone how to transcribe off a record, and I'm not really talking about legit transcribing where you write the notes down on paper. Fuck that. I don't know how to read. That would be a waste of time for me.
Right.
Just learn how to get ideas from other players and incorporate those ideas into your own playing. It's not hard. It's not that hard. People think it's harder than it is.
Right. Yeah, well, I'll book it.
Yeah, it'd be fun, man.
Yeah.
We'll have a good time.
Yeah. And I mean, wrapping it up, let's talk about touring, because I know we have a lot of dates already booked. And I heard of you playing in Europe, Asia, South America, much more than North America.
Yeah, the States is kind of a wash for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for us. It's kind of my fault because I you know, when I'm from Florida and I made a choice to not go to New York. I just hate cold weather. I can't stand it. I can't live in that snow and that shit. I can't do it. So I moved to LA. If I lived in New York or on the East Coast, I could probably afford to rent a van and put all of our gear in the van and drive up and down the East Coast and do gigs and probably make some money. But the fact that I live in LA, there's nothing out here on the West Coast as far as jazz fusion gigs. And so to fly to the East Coast with all the plane tickets and then rent a van, rent gear, the gas prices are through the roof.
Yeah.
And what the clubs pay in the States is about half of what they pay in Europe and other places. It just wouldn't be profitable. In fact, we could even lose money trying to do it.
Yeah.
And so, and plus my guys live in Paris and in Europe.
Oh yeah.
So it just doesn't work for us. They used to come out for NAMM. And we used to play around LA. We used to play in San Diego, down by the beach in San Pedro. We used to drive to Las Vegas and do a gig out there. But those guys paid $2,500 each for a work visa for the States. It doesn't seem fair, man. Like, I don't need a visa to go play in Europe.
Yeah.
But those guys need a $2,500 work visa to play in the United States. That doesn't seem fair.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And it doesn't seem fair to them. So they said, fuck that. I'm not going to do that. The money they make isn't worth it.
Yeah. I'm guessing that in Canada would be sort of the same scenario, because
it would be the same scenario. Yeah. And even back in the day, man, when gas was cheap, Tribal Tech, when I was in Tribal Tech, we bought a van. We bought a big Ford van and we drove around the United States probably 6 or 7 times playing gigs, and we drove to Montreal and we played in Toronto. And we played at that famous place in Toronto where the Stones played, you know?
El Mocambo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we played there.
Right.
And it's really fun, you know? And but we never made any money.
Yeah.
But
I know.
the thing is back then, that was when we were really young and we didn't care. We didn't have families. We didn't have kids.
Yeah.
We were just doing it for fun.
Yeah.
And the fact that we never made any money doing it, we didn't care. We were just doing it.
Yeah.
Now we can't do that now. We have kids, you know.
I know.
And
I know.
we have responsibilities now. We can't just go out unless we're going to make some money.
Yeah. Well, man, I might have to travel to South America back home to be able to see you. I don't know.
Well, you know, Brazil is kind of getting back to normal now, right? After COVID, it took a while, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, we just went to South America like about a year ago. We played in Argentina, we played in Chile, played in Uruguay, right? But we didn't go to Brazil because they just weren't ready. The COVID thing was still really bad there.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now things are getting back to normal in Brazil. So we probably will go back to Brazil maybe in 2025, I'm hoping.
Okay.
Yeah. So may see you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I sure hope so. I really miss playing in Brazil because it's been so long now. It's been almost 5 years since we played in Brazil.
Yeah, it's a cool place. I mean, if you visit, it's much better to visit than to live there. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, okay. Well, we always enjoy it. We always play at I remember this club. Well, last time we were in Brazil, we played the Blue Note in Sao Paulo.
Right.
That's a beautiful club. It was a really good sound, and we had a great audience, and it was so much fun.
Right.
So that's where I would really like to go back and play, because of all the clubs I've played in Sao Paulo, that was the best sounding room that we've played in. It was really a cool club. So I hope we can go back soon.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed, man. But either way, this was an awesome interview. I apologize because I have a horrible cold here, but
sorry, man. Sorry. I hope it's not COVID.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But I'll get better.
You got your shots?
I did.
I just got mine, you know, because we're going on the road. So I got my flu shot, my COVID shot, my RSV shot, my tetanus shot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my arm's going to fall off. I got so many shots. I'm ready for the road, man.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, man, I wish you a great 2024.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Same to you, man.
Yeah.
And I hope to see you online. You know, we'll do a listen.
I'll book it for sure. All right.
Okay, man.
Thanks,
you take care. All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.